What is up, Force fam? Star Wars Dad back for another video. Today we are going to be looking at what I think are the best decks going forward post-Galactics. Before we get into today's video, please make sure to check out my Patreon if you want to get more exclusive content from me. Please also make sure to sign up for the 6,000 subscriber giveaway, where I'll be giving away 3 Darth Vader hyperspace foils. And for today's video, I'll be giving out a Darth Malik Prestige. And just kind of let me know in the comments what decks that you think are missing from this list, or what deck has a strong argument that it should be on this list, or that you think we will see more of in the coming weeks. So to get into today's video, I mean, a lot of these decks are, it's not rocket science. Like, a lot of these are going to be some of the lists that you've seen before. I do think there are a few decks that have creeped their way into what I consider like the top 10 decks currently. I mean, I think hands down, Han Blue is still the best deck in format. We did see this deck as the most represented deck at the Galactic Championships, and 2 out of the top 8 were this deck. I just think that this deck just has inherent qualities in it that just make it the best, like the card advantage, the ability to cheat things out early, restore effects, the strong pieces of removal, and the strong closers. I mean, it's got a little bit of everything in this list, and I just think it's in a really good spot. It has good matchups across the board. It's hard to beat it consistently because of the tools and weapons it has at its disposal. I think it's going to continue to be one of the best decks in the format until rotation. Unless, something crazy happens or we get some really strong cards for other archetypes. But I just think that this deck has all the tools that you need. Force Throw continues to be a staple in the meta, as most of the decks that I'm going to mention today have Force Throw in them, which, big surprise. I just don't see this deck going away for a while. I think this is going to continue to be the most dominant deck. I mean, I think of the about 10 PQs that I've seen online results for, this deck has won almost half of them. So if that doesn't, give you any inclination, and then even before Galactics, this deck was winning all the PQs. But yeah, I just think it's just got everything you need. Owen Lars is a really strong addition that we've seen in a lot of lists recently, just to be able to have even more consistency with your card advantage. The fact that you can cheat it out for free at any time is also amazing. And especially because when it dies, you get to benefit off that, so you're fine with it dying. And the Restore 2 is just like a added bonus to this deck for more restore effects. I've definitely seen different variations of this list, like ones without the daughter or even Ezra. I don't think those 2 cards are necessary in here. Yeah, I mean, the top end is always going to be pretty similar with like 3 Lukes, 3 Crates. I've seen lists that some lists have the Chewbacca's, others don't. I like the Chewbacca. And then variations of Anakin and Mace Windu, just to be able to cheat those out early. Some lists play Poe, I think, still, just because of its upgrade and ability to push damage. Some lists play more forces with me. I personally play a couple forces with me because it's just so good in here for closing things out. This was just a top 8 list by Mikhail Conroe. So, yeah, we're going to see this deck everywhere, unless something changes. Like if Force Throw were to happen to get suspended, I don't think it will. I think it's, for the most part, fairly balanced. I think the most annoying thing about Force Throw is when someone Force Throws their own Crate Dragons, which is definitely a little overpowered. But, there's always going to be cards that are a little bit overpowered, right? So I don't know. We'll see if they suspend it. I just don't think they will, with it being rotated out in March anyways. Next up on the list, it has to be Talzin. This is my particular version, a little different than some of the versions you may have seen. I am playing 54 cards. If you want to play closer to 50, I would just say trim the 3 Dr. Pershing. I personally love the Dr. Pershing, as it gives me an additional way of, like, an additional component that this deck's biggest weakness is, like, getting just your hand demolished before you can find the things that you need. So, like, heavy discard decks, because you don't have a lot of card draw in here. So Dr. Pershing, it's not a card I want to play on turn 1. It's a card I want to play more on, like, 5 resources alongside, like, a Fallen Lightsaber or, like, a 3-drop, for example. But it's, when I play it, it becomes very impactful at helping me find my closing pieces to close the game out, and just kind of help me rebuild that hand size, get things in my resources like my Long Pikes, just find some of those more top end units and some of my removal. I would say that my version is a little more well balanced. It's not as focused on winning quickly. It's more defensive, but that's just my play style. But again, if you wanted to try out this version, you want to play closer to 50, you could just take out the 3 Pershing, have 51 cards, or even take out another card to cut it close to get exactly at 50. It has felt great in testing for me. I just feel like I have well-rounded matchups. I don't think there's any deck out there that I feel weak against. I think Talzin is in such a good spot. I think other colors of Talzin are good too, and I'll talk about one of those in a second that I really like. But this is definitely this deck and another deck are my top 3. I'll talk about all those because they're all on here for decks that I love to play right now. I mean, for this deck, again, it's just like I love the unit removal, having so many pieces of removal in here when you add in the unit removal that you have, just being able to slowly take over the game piece by piece and just keep your opponent's board really empty a lot of times. In the sideboard, still that kind of depends on how things shape up. But the parliamentarians are obviously because Kylo is going to see a surge. I don't think the Syndulas are necessary. That probably is the card I would cut at the moment. Even when I side in like Crate Dragons, I don't think I need the Syndula. I still have enough tools in the meantime that are strong, like my pieces of removal and just kind of going wide and using unit removal and disrupting their hand, since I'm a little more focused on that in my particular version. I do still think Bombing Run is pretty necessary, but I do play the Grenade Strikes in the main board for like Vader Yellow and decks like that, as space is one of the weaknesses for Talzin. And I still prefer to play Top Target just because of like super aggressive decks, especially the space ones. I think Top Target just is a really nice way to slow that down. And there's certain cards against Sabine that like I don't want to have in here at all, like Pillage, probably Devastators. You just take those 4 out, add in the top targets. You could probably add in the Bombing Runs, I would say, and take out one other thing just to be a little lower to the ground against them. But yeah, this is just one of my favorite decks, and I just think it's in such a good spot. It has a lot of 50-50 matchups. It's one of those decks that there's not too many things that you don't want to see. I think for some of the other versions that you may have seen that are more mainstream, they're a little, they really don't want to see like Vader Yellow type of decks because that's hard for them to consistently find the right piece of removal at the right time. This is a version, like I said, it's just a little more balanced, but not as aggressive. We're not playing the Krennics in this particular version. I think that's a good way to play it too, and it just doesn't match my playstyle. But next up is another Talzin deck. I wouldn't say this is like top 5, but I would say it's very strong. I mean, it finished 12th at Worlds, so that's something to pay attention to. Now, I'm sure the player that has a lot to do with the player's talent and skill, but I have play tested this list and it feels very, very good. It's not the same as Red, obviously, but it is a little more aggressive with things like Sneak Attack, Hotshot Blaster being cheaper, using Constructed Lightsaber on Talzin's Flip instead of Fallen Lightsaber. And then, of course, you're playing a lot of the same units. The difference is you get like Starfighter and Shin Hati. Starfighter has good synergy with Talzin's ability. Unfortunately, you have to play Kylo because there's no turn 1 yellow units that are worth much as far as stats. So a little weaker there, and you don't have the Acolyte to get the Force online right away. But I don't think that matters too much. Xian Flurry is really nice in here to pull Vader out, and even just to use early on in some of your Force units as a way to ambush in things, like especially with Shin Hati, like just to be able to ambush him with a shielded unit. Same with Darth Tyrannus if you don't have the Force online. Even Talzin's Assassin can be sweet to take out 2 things at once. So Xian Flurry is really, really sweet in here. I really have enjoyed this list, and this is just an exact copy of the 12th place players list. But this, if you haven't tried this one out, I'd absolutely recommend it. It's a lot of fun if you like Talzin, but it's also just a very good deck. And I think that we will see more of this. And I know everyone's going to be copying the Talzin Red list that won, but this is just an example of how strong Talzin, the leader, is. And again, shout out to the player, because I mean, taking this all the way to 12th is amazing. But that 12th is really close to winning. Like that's super close. 1 or 2 things went a different way. We could have been talking about Talzin Yellow. So something to really pay attention to here. I mean, getting to use Cad Bane and even Snoke if you decided to add Snoke in here, which I think Snoke has great synergy with Talzin. I get why people haven't been playing it in their 60 cards, but I absolutely think it's worth a consideration. But Cad Bane and Snoke together is great. You could also play Avenger even at the top end if you needed more top end cards. But I like where this list is at. It's a little more aggressive, like I said. But shout out to Loomis for playing this deck and having such success with it. But also just a really, really great list. Next up this is my particular version. It's one of my top 3 decks to play right now. I think this deck is in such a great spot. I've seen a few PQs already since Galactics where it's finished like in the top 4. But I just think this deck is just got what you need. Again, it's a very similar list to Hantu Blue, Hero Red and Blue package that we've seen, but a little different because you're getting to use those early drops to really just take things out. Still focused on hand disruption, still using Crate Dragons, just very, very similar list. The biggest difference for me is the Constructed Lightsaber giving Anakin a restore on its flip turn, as well as just like that being more of a focus in this list. I definitely need to consider Owen Lars in here, as that is a very strong card. But and maybe I would trim like, I don't know, like a Jedi in hiding potentially. Obviously the curve is a little different than Han and a little more focus on discard, but I think maybe a couple of Owen Lars is worth finding a way to squeeze in here. But yeah, I mean, just the way you can really just have really favorable trades with your units early on with all these beefy HP units is really strong. Red 5 is great in here to kind of clean things up that have been damaged, especially from your Sentinels like Village Protector and Chirrut. In this side, using a combination of Parliamentarian and Kit Fisto's Ether Sprite for like Kylo and heavy upgrade decks. Jedi Starfighter is absolutely amazing against Vader Yellow to bring in. I think that card is incredible. It's also really good in Kit Fisto. But, in here you can swing up for 3, do a damage to one of their 1/1s, and take out their thing that has more, more defense with the 3 power. So Jedi Starfighter is just really, really good in here for space decks. This deck has been very, very good in testing. This is probably one of the ones, like if I was going to play in a big tournament, this is one that I would strongly consider bringing just because it feels so well-rounded. And I always feel a little better when I have some restore in my deck, and this deck has a good amount of restore. So Itinerant Warrior, I don't see a lot of people play that card as much as I thought from initial, when it was initially released. But for me, that card is amazing. It's shielded. It heals 3. And the way I like to play Anakin is I like to be able to be more aggressive with my units as defense, mechanisms early on. And I like to be able to have lots of ways to restore myself so that I can be more aggressive. So the Warrior gives me another way to gain 3 life. And then I can even use the Warrior to swing up for 6 damage and take out like a leader. And it's just loses a shield. I mean, that's one of the qualities about it that I just absolutely love in here. Another one that I think is just going to be consistent until rotation. Again, if we lose Force Throw, then maybe things will change. You could also play Force Lightning in this or Hantu Blue. I've seen people playing that to make Anakin better, which I think is a solid consideration. I would probably trim a Rival's Fall and maybe, I don't know. I'd have to play around with that more to figure that out, but I do think that's a card to consider. Next up, I think this is a Woo's list from the top 4 of the world. I just think Quinlan is one of those decks that has earned a spot in the top 5. Like, it's just a consistent. Now, I think people aren't playing it as much because it's not as much fun to play it as all these Force decks. But I just think it just has all the tools, right? It's, a lot of hand disruption. The smuggle component, the smuggle units are so good. The Hotshot Blaster is so good in here. Plo Koon and Depa Baloba are great. Quinlan gives it an added boost to close games out. Guerrilla Soldier is just amazing for a turn 2 play in here. Tarkintown's one of the best bases in the game. You're still playing Millennium Falcon. I would probably play this list a little bit different, but not much. Like maybe tweak 2 or 3 cards, not too much. And then Han Solo at the top end just to trade in with leaders and things like that and hit that 7 damage. I just think this is another deck that's in a great spot. I would probably play Constructed Lightsaber, I think is in my version. But again, I just think Quinlan's going to be consistently up there in all these big tournaments and all these PQs that we're going to be seeing. It's not going anywhere. It's aggro. Super aggro is obviously one of its more difficult matchups, but super aggro is not really, the thing that we have to worry about right now, and in a more of a mid-range meta where like it's not like Sabine and some other aggro deck just dominating. Quinlan does a really good job against those decks and like disrupting them and just being able to be more aggressive than them. And the hand disruption combined with the ambush effects and the awkward plays and the early Tarkintowns, like Quinlan can really just take over the game so fast. So I think that's a deck that's not going anywhere. I still enjoy this deck, but Cad Bane again. It's another one that's just gonna be there. It's again we're talking about Tarkintown decks, but Cad Bane got a lot of tools from Legends of the Force, and I think it's just one of those leaders again that has all the pieces to be consistently a strong threat. It definitely has some weaknesses, and it struggles against like the Datavault soft control decks for sure. And I do think we're going to be seeing more of those, and I'll talk about that here in a few minutes. But overall, this deck just continues to be a nuisance. It's not the most fun deck to play against, like especially if you're a unit focused. Like their ambush effects and the pinging with Cad and Tarkintown and surprise strikes and hotshot blasters, like they can just do a lot of things to be extremely aggravating. Jabba the Hutt is very, very good in here. The McClunky play is great. The Bazine McClunky play. Just all the pinging from your units too, that like Ruthless Raiders and IGs, and it's just it does a good job at what it does, right? And I mean, this is another one I've seen it have multiple top 8s already since Galactics, and it did really well at Galactics. I was watching a few games of people on live stream, and it was just, I mean, it's just a grind. Like playing against Cad is always difficult. I always find it difficult to play against with most decks that I'm playing, unless I'm playing just like hard control or soft, like a Qi'ra Datavault or Iden Datavault type of deck. Like it's always a grind. It feels like it's always in the game, and it can always come back out of nowhere. And I swear they always have Cad Bane in their hand on 7 resources. I don't know what that is, but the magic of Cad Bane the leader, you just always seem to find Cad Bane the unit in your hand. I think it deserves a top 5 spot in my mind, because it's so consistent, and a really strong Cad player is always going to have a chance in a tournament, I think. Next up is Kylo5 Tarkintown. I think it has already proven that it deserves to be right on the cusp. I think the only reason it's not in the top 5 for me at this point is because of longevity. It's a newer deck, but I think over time, if we continue to see this deck and maybe see it evolve a little bit to adjust to people game planning for it, and if it's able to get past that, all the parliamentarians and other things that people come up with, and Kit Fisto's ether sprites and whatnot, then I just think that this is going to be one of the top 5 decks. And Kylo's not going anywhere. Kylo's such an awesome leader. This is where my current list is at right now. It's just a great deck. And I think this is one of those decks that does require you as a player to get in a lot of reps and, really against a lot of different matchups to get really good with this. But absolutely, again, we're talking about Tarkintown decks, right? Tarkintown is the best base in the game. Like being able to just completely remove your opponent's unit as early as turn 1 and just get an advantage against them in the race is just so strong. And this deck really wants to put pressure on your opponent a little bit before the Kylo flip, so that it can use the Kylo flip to finish you off, and then Devastator to clean things up if it didn't completely finish you off with Kylo. This deck is such a, again, that the Bothan network just did an incredible job building this deck. And playing this deck especially, and having 6 players get to the top 64 that's amazing in a tournament with close to 3,000 people. But yeah, I've already seen this deck win a PQ since Galactics, so this deck's going to be everywhere, and I would imagine over the next couple months this deck will probably be in my top 5 is my guess. I think it has the right colors to be able to adjust to continue to evolve as things and other decks try to game plan for it. And it's also just a ton of fun to play this deck. So next up is this is my Kylo ECL deck. This is a deck that for me, I think it's in the top 10. I have not seen it have results, but that's okay. Again, what I love about this game is you as a player can take a deck that maybe others don't think is a top deck and win a lot of big things with it. And I just think that this deck is very well rounded. There's not any real matchups that I'm afraid of. I would say maybe hard control. Maybe Iden Datavault's probably not a great matchup. I would imagine, since they're not really playing units early on. So probably those decks, but otherwise, like I'm okay playing against whatever with this deck. Again, it has a ton of card draw. I love being able to just ditch things in the discard pile, cycle things, and top target is great against aggro. It's most other matchups I'm just ditching it for card draw. We have a good space matchup with Inferno and Onyx, and Eager Escort in the side, Supreme, and then Avengers, our closer. Anakin and Darth Vader ECLs are just so strong in here. This is my favorite ECL deck to play right now because I just feel like it has what I like in an ECL deck to be able to handle only having the 25 HP against more aggressive opponents. I am, again, I'm playing the top target, 1 copy of Vigilance in the main, 1 in the side, and then a couple of Devotion. So just a lot of different ways. The Sentinels are great on the ground, the Supremacy in space. And then obviously we're doing the Legal Authority Craving Power combo for this deck. I do think the Datavault version is good too, but I still prefer this one. And I did just see that the Datavault version won, and I think that's because a lot of people don't like to play top target because they're afraid of upgrade removal, and they like having that extra cushiony 8 HP. It makes them feel comfortable, and that's cool. Everybody prefers different things, but I just still think that ECL is very strong, and it just needs the right tools to be able to handle a diverse set of opponents. I've talked about this list a few times now, but the 3 Inferno 4s are just necessary for setting up your draws with all the card draw you have with Kylo. Playing, I think, 14 upgrades for Kylo's ability, the heirloom, to set up Anakin. We're not playing Rey because Rey feels a little awkward to me, and I just haven't had enough good experiences with it to keep it in here. I've definitely tried it out a lot, though. Playing a lot of early Sentinels for me is the way that I've approached this list, as well as using those Sentinels to sometimes clear the board with Craving Power and Barrage, and also put pressure on my opponents occasionally. Playing a decent amount of removal with the Power of the Dark Side, the Barrage, the Craving Powers. The 1 copy of Vigilance is in here as just an additional way to gain 5 life against aggro in the main, but it's also a way to put shields on things for Darth Vader, and to put shields on like your Sentinels, like your Chilsons and your Kylo. Legal Authority, of course, is just absolutely amazing in here when you flip with Craving Power. Playing the 3 Laser Tech and the 3 Resupply to ramp up into Kylo quickly. The sideboard added in the Parliamentarians for expecting Kylo to be everywhere. 2nd copy of Vigilance for more aggressive opponents. A couple Palps Return to be able to cheat out Snokes. That's a good thing to do against like Vader. Bringing in the Eager Escorts against Vader Yellow or Heavy SpaceX. Shadow Intentions is my 1 copy for hard control, but that's just a matchup I would say that I would not want to see. But yeah, otherwise this deck has been very, very strong in testing. I think it's like 75% win percentage. So one of my top 3 to play right now between this, Talzin Red, and Anakin Blue. Here's the Datavault version, my updated version. I am playing the Snapshot Reflex in here now because this is more of like a soft control deck. So I really like the idea of like putting subtle pressure and then, getting rid of Snapshot, early on, and then being able to pull Kylo out around like close to 10 resources, as I would say, where I would ideally like to be able to pull it out, and then use Snapshot Reflex to immediately get in for an attack before someone can just remove Kylo. And then playing more like top-end units, using Maul instead of Vader, no Timelies, and then Avenger and Devastator and Snoke as our other closers. So this deck has felt good in testing too. I still prefer the ECL version, but I do think that Datavault will see a lot more play. Like I said, I think a lot of people don't really... I'm still playing top target in here because, again, I just see value in it, discarding it in matchups where I don't need it. But I get why people think it's like a dead card in some matchups, but I don't think it's dead in here. There is a lot of upgrade removal, but again, if my opponent's using upgrade removal for my top targets, then for me, in most situations, that's a win. Next up is Qi'ra Datavault, which has definitely dropped down a few spots for sure. And I put it below Kylo because Kylo has been doing a lot better. I don't think Qi'ra Datavault is dead. I think it's still a very good deck. And I think it just needs... It's more of a deck that needs time to adjust, right? Like, it needs to adjust to how things got off to a very Legends of the Force heavy start. And it just needs time to evolve itself to be able to respond to that. So I'm not ready to write it off, and it still did pretty good at Galactics. I think I saw a couple in the top 64, But I think it's one of those decks that just needs a little time. It has so many tools at its disposal in these colors, and it still just has a very strong ability and a very strong synergy with Barrage. And I think Craving Power is another card that is good with Qi'ra. And it still has those same top end units from Kylo Datavault, even more so in here because you're more focused on your top end than you are on upgrades. So the reinforcement walkers, the OG Darth Vader. We are playing the timely in here. Eighth Brother is a good addition. Avenger and Devastator to bring things home. Like, it still feels like a strong deck. It's a deck that I still feel very confident playing it against a multitude of things. I'm not ready to write it off. So I did see a few in top eights over the past week. So maybe we'll see some more adjustments and see Qi'ra on the rise again. I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts on that one? I'd be interested to hear. I mean, next is Sabine. I still think it's, it's a deck that we always, every single deck that I play, I have this deck in mind, and it has to be in the top 10 if it's a deck that I'm constantly thinking about. I don't think it's top 5 anymore. I think we're finally at a place where the force mechanic was really strong, and Tarkintown is just so strong, and I think that Sabine has just kind of fallen down a little bit, but it's still always going to be that annoying nuisance that's there, and it's still like a baseline that you have to consider when you're making a deck. Like, can I get through a Sabine if I run into a few of them, or is it just going to run me over? And this was an updated list. I think I saw somebody make like top 4 at a PQ. This is not my list, but I just really think it just gets, if Sabine gets a couple of Rebel units that, like, maybe like 2 drops or 3 drops, like a couple really strong Rebel units, maybe like 2 or 3 of them in the next set before it rotates out, like, I could see this deck have a strong resurgence where, it goes wide, or it just runs you over by the flip turn, and it's just good game. So there's a potential that still happens. I still think it's relevant, this deck, for sure, and it can still win some tournaments, absolutely. But it's just something that's always going to be annoying. I think it has a good matchup into Villainy ECL for sure. And just like, it's still good against hard control, like being able to just ping, 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 and close the game out as quickly as possible. Rebel Assault is still just one of the strongest ways to win games. And Cassian is awesome, and Fleet Lieutenant is awesome, and Wing Leader is awesome, and Sabine's Masterpiece is awesome at just getting in for additional damage. Pose and Wreckers to clean house. K2SO is still really good against control. Like, Fighters for Freedom, you're bringing in against control, right? So I think it's a deck that we're just going to continue to see until it rotates out. I will be glad to see it rotate out. I will be interested to see what deck takes its place, like what aggro deck becomes the new Sabine. I'm definitely interested to see that, because I'm definitely tired of seeing Sabine. But at the same time, it's a deck that if I'm playing any of the other decks that I just mentioned that I enjoy playing, I am happy to see a Sabine matchup. So, because I'm ready for it. I'll be interested to see what new aggro leader we get that flips on 4, that has good stats and good abilities and good synergy with their units and all that. Be interested to see what's next. Next up is Iden Datavault. Iden Datavault, I think we have had 2 of these already win PQ since Galactics, and I think this is one of those decks that's just in a great, great spot. I'm glad to see Iden back in the fold because it was so strong initially. And I've always been a fan of Iden decks. I think it has a good Hantu Blue matchup. This is just one of those decks that I really enjoy playing as more of a control type of player. You got your card draw with Pershing, you got your ramp, you have Timely for your Vader, and for your units later on, all your home run hitters on the bottom 2 rows. And I just love this style of soft control where you're using good removal early on, the I Am Your Fathers, the Merciless Contents, the Power of the Dark Sides, the Perilous Positions, all those on turn 2 to just kind of get rid of whatever's there or slow your opponent down. The Entrenched to slow your opponent down, and you have the Fells and the Takedowns, the No Glories, a couple of Barrage, since you're not really using that until like 8 resources most of the time. And then Iden's just I guess that has that strong ability of gaining subtle life to keep you in the game, and Datavault's really annoying combined with Iden. Like, it just makes it to where really your opponent has to get like almost like 45 to 50 damage on you to get through you, and that's that's a pain in the butt. And then you just, by that time, like, you're bringing out Reinforcement Walker and Snoke and Avenger and Devastator and Annihilator and saying, beat this. So I just think this deck is in a very good spot. It does not surprise me at all that 2 of these have already won PQs. I think this is going to be a deck that you need to start preparing for and testing against, because it's going to be played a lot. I probably will do a video on this deck sometime soon, because I just haven't played Iden in a long time and I really enjoy playing it. This particular person, Nate Ferraro, was a PQ winner. He had the couple of parliamentarians on the side for Kylo, a couple of eager escorts for Vader Yellow, I'd imagine. He has a couple of just the one Terran attack for the Force decks. But he has his game plan is just early removal. And then by like the Iden flip turn, which you're probably delaying a little bit in here, I would imagine, to protect it. Then you're bringing like Vader out on 7 to clear the way, and then you're flipping Iden. Eighth Brother's another good ambush effect that you could even play just on 6. Resupply and resupply carrier to help you ramp into all your bombs later on, and then and then it's just beat those bottom 2 rows. Like, that's just power. Early control and then finish with strong power. Such a fun way to play this game. And if you're one of those people that hates control or like decks like this, I would encourage you to play it yourself. I used to feel that way too when I was playing against control, especially when I played Magic. And then I started playing it myself and I realized why so many people like it. And it's just a different way of approaching the game, and it's just so much fun to play, because the game is survival. It's not I punch you and you punch me. It's me trying to survive, the onslaught that is coming my way, and figuring out ways to navigate that and all the damage that I'm taking and survive. And then once I get to a tipping point, I would imagine around 20 HP in here is when that typically happens, or 20 damage. And then you can start to turn the corner and just get to these really, really fun units to start blowing your opponent out of the water and taking over the game. And just like, I love when I get a ton of damage on my base, like 25, and then I'm able to turn it down to like 10 or less by the end of the game. It's just it's just a fun way to play the game. It takes a lot more thinking. It's not just I play whatever removal is in my hand. It's that I have to plan out 2 or 3 turns ahead of time and figure out what removal is going to be the most impactful for the amount of units. If my opponent's going wide, are they going to be playing big, powerful units? Or, what's their game plan? What's the worst thing that they could have that I don't want to see? Or, what am I expecting to see? It just creates a lot more thinking ahead of time instead of just playing my unit and attacking, which, that's definitely a way to play the game. But I think that's a way that, for me, has gotten less interesting over time, because it requires a lot less thought and a lot less strategy. So I would encourage you just to try this out. And if you have any questions about how to play against decks like this, definitely let me know. And I did a video on that a long time ago too. So how to beat control decks or soft control decks. This is another really sweet deck, and I think it is worthy of being considered in this list because it has had a lot of success recently. I think 1 or 2 PQs recently. I think it was just 1. A Yoda Red deck won, but we saw this deck make like top 70 at the Worlds. This is a different variation that by Eve Lunch that just recently won a PQ. I really like this version. It's a ton of card draw. We have Owen Lars to find Force units. You have C-3PO early on to be able to just find things. You have Night Sister. You have Red Squadron X-Wing. You have You're My Only Hope to cheat things out. You have Ki-Adi-Mundi to draw more cards. You have the Ray to continuously cycle that and do damage to your opponent's units and synergize that with things like Force Throw and Open Fire and Bombing Run. Rebellious Hammerhead is nice in here too to just ping things, especially because you have a big hand size in this deck, which is really sweet. And then just like strong removal with Fell the Dragon and the Force Throws, of course, and 1 copy of Rivals Fall. You have the Luke Skywalkers. No Anakins in here, but that makes sense though, because you're playing a little more solid units like with the Owen Lars and the Night Sister, and then you have cards like Open Fire and Bombing Run and Fell and Rivals Fall that kind of prevent Anakin, and even Great Dragon and Bendu. So Anakin definitely doesn't make sense in this particular version. On the sideboard, you're playing a couple Vigilance to have some more restore, the 3 Concord Dawn for space heavy decks, another Bombing Run for space heavy decks. Smoke and Cinder is a cool card as another way to get your opponent to discard cards, especially because you have a big hand size. So it's just a really cool list here. But I definitely think that we're gonna be seeing more of this deck, and it's not fun to play against. I'll just say that out. It's not at all fun to play against. It's absolutely fun to play this deck though. I do think it takes a little more reps than most decks though to kind of get the hang of it, get a feel for it, and how to survive against more aggressive opponents, and just how to navigate the lines of play. I think is a little more complex than other decks, but it's a really fun deck. I've always loved Yoda since it came out, but this particular Yoda feels really good. Again, it's that Hero Red shell, but a little different, to synergize with Yoda's abilities. But I think this is one we're going to see a lot more of as well. So congrats to Eve Lunch on the PQ win. Boba Datavault, get into a couple of space lists. This was a list by Josh S., who has won a couple PQs with this list already. He had gave this list for me to share a few videos ago, but I just think his list is so good. And he's had like over 200 games of testing with this list. And I just think that Boba Datavault is, if I was going to play a space heavy deck, this is the one I would play. I've really enjoyed the indirect damage, and I think the Datavault way is the best way to play it. I love the use of TIE Dagger to finish things off. I love TIE Bomber with Vader combo. I like Strike Ship as an additional powerful unit. The Power Failure makes so much sense in here. The Open Fire in combination with your indirect damage and your Daring Raids to finish things off. The Dornian Gunship is a great target for Boba when it flips. You got the Barrage, the Ruthless Raiders, and then you get to just blow things out of the water with Planetary Bombardment, and then you have your top end of Vader Maul and Devastator. So yeah, just a lot of fun to play this deck. And then Great Dragon's coming in against more mid-range control. Entrenched, I would imagine, is for like heavy ground decks where they have really powerful units that you're afraid of, especially if they can keep pace with you. This deck does play a little more aggressively, where you're able to close the game out fairly quickly. I would say maybe around the Boba flip or a turn afterwards, you can usually close the game out if you have a good, strong start. But yeah, this deck is just really good. It did well at Galactics. We've seen it do well at PQs already. Had at least a couple top 8s. But I just think that it's in a good spot. And it's a deck that has a good matchup going into Hantu Blue. And since that's the best deck in format, why not play a deck that has a good matchup against it, right? And then last but not least, I think Vader Yellow still deserves a spot in this video just because it's a deck that I have talked about 5 times already, right? Like, it's something you have to be prepared for. And if, even if it doesn't always beat you, it's still a nuisance that you have to think about, especially if you're playing a heavy force deck or a ground heavy deck. Like, it's just there, and it has that potential to just run you over. And those kind of decks are necessary to keep a balanced meta. But they may not win all the time, but it's going to be there. And, it did get top 8 at the Galactics. I'm sure it had a few more finishes in the top 64. I can't remember exactly. And I've already seen it have multiple top finishes at PQs, and I'm sure we'll see it win a few PQs in the next month or two. It's just one of those decks that is always going to be around. It just, goes wide and just can get really powerful with Victor Leader and Clone Combat Squadron, and then Vader's flip turn, and Stolen AT Hauler, and Sanctioner Shuttle, just being able to capture things, which is coordinated so easy to get in here. So, but yeah, I would love to hear what you guys think are some decks that I may have missed, or think that you think deserve to be on this list, or maybe even high on the list. And as always, I appreciate all the participation in the comment section. It definitely keeps me motivated because I really enjoy interacting with you guys. I did also add a Discord, finally, and I have a great guy from the community named Gudo, who also has a YouTube channel, and I'll post his channel on here. That's actually helping me with the Discord because I do not have a lot of experience with that at all. But yeah, this community just continues to be great, and I love you guys. But as always, y'all have a good one, and peace out.